Namaskar and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Sai. I'm quite sure many of you are thinking, sir, what is the agenda for today's discussion? I can see an image of Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking with businessman Elon Musk. I'm quite sure you've heard of Elon Musk. He's known for his successful ventures, PayPal before, Tesla. He's known for Twitter acquisition. But one of the successful ventures that Elon Musk runs is SpaceX. It is one of the successful space-based company in United States of America. I'm quite sure you've heard of it. Not just Elon Musk, but you must have heard about Richard Branson, who boasts of Virgin Galactic. Jeff Bezos of Amazon, who's building Blue Origin. There are many companies in United States of America who are working towards space-based development, isn't it? Now, a question for you. Who is this personality? Do you know this guy? There's a name written, it's not his name, it's the company that he runs, Agni Cosmos. This is the co-founder and the CEO of Agni Cosmos, Srinath Ravichandran. How many of you know him? If you do not know him now, you will know him in a few years for sure, because India's private sector entities are also upcoming, and some of the names connected with private sector are Srinath Ravichandran, Pawan Kumar Chandana, and many others among many upcoming startups connected with space. And our agenda for discussion today is private sector participation in India's space sector. In fact, let's begin our discussion with a question. This is the question. Discuss the evolution of India's space program with special focus on the role of private entities in India's space sector. Now, you need to understand that there are two key terms here. One is the evolution and the other one is private entities. And to attempt this question, you will be getting very good fodder in this video lecture, because I will be discussing about this evolution. And when we talk about this evolution, for many decades, for I would say 5 to 6 decades, the prime focus was on ISRO. In fact, even today, the focus is on ISRO, yes. But in the last few years or in the last decade or so, the focus has been growing continuously on the private entities as well. So we'll understand this entire journey of India's Odyssey or India's space voyage. To get to know that information, stay with me till the very end. All right, let's begin. But before that, there is a small notice for all the UPSC civil services aspirants. StudyIQ's Prelims to Interview Initiative Batch 2 is going to begin from October 23rd. This is an ideal batch for the college students who are in third year or final year, homemakers, anybody who's working, because if you're looking to prepare for 2024, this is applicable. 2025 again applicable. 2026 again applicable. Why? Because we are providing multiple formats, again multiple formats of teaching, along with it multiple validities for you, so you can choose according to your convenience and according to your ears. Just visit our website studyiq.com. You will get to know all the features of this comprehensive program, where we will be hand-holding you through prelims, through mains, and through interview for the year that you choose. All right, do it now. I'll see you in the class. Right, let's begin our discussion about Indian space journey or India's space foray. Now, we all know Indian space foray, it began rather modestly. We gained independence in 1947, but before that also, many of the scientists, they were, I would say, in the initial period, they were working towards space-based activities, space-based research. The scientists like C.V. Raman, Meghnad Saha, they have contributed towards understanding through their models, through their computation, etc. But the real journey of India's space odyssey, it begins after independence. In 1950, for the first time, all space-based research and activities, they were brought under Department of Atomic Energy, which was headed by Homi Jahangir Baba. So for almost a decade or so, all the activities connected to atomic energy and space-based research, they were under Department of Atomic Energy, DAE only. However, these works were separated. In 1962, Jawaharlal Nehru government, they set up a committee called as INCOSPAR, Indian National Committee for Space Research, and this was now headed by Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. This was the formal beginning of India's space research separately, and since that day, we have not looked behind. The INCOSPAR, which was set up in 1962, it later on turned into ISRO in 1969. During this journey of INCOSPAR to ISRO, we had already established the Tumba Center in southern India, the Tumba Equatorial Launching Station, TER, LS TERLS. During this time, since 1969, we started to collaborate more and more with other players like NASA, like Roscosmos. In fact, in 1975, we first launched Aryabhata, our own satellite. In 1984, we sent an astronaut from India to the Soyuz capsule of USSR. So we had a collaborated manned mission. Rakesh Sharma, we all know the name. And later on, we started to develop our own launch vehicles. We know about the ASLV, PSLV, the workhorse PSLV, and then now we are talking about the GSLV, Geosynchronous Launch Vehicle Mark III. It has been renamed to LVM-3. Now, if we look at India's journey, as I told you, it was very modest to begin with. In fact, this picture, it speaks 1,000 words. A scientist, an individual taking parts of a rocket on a cycle. From that day, we have reached or we have landed today on moon. So our journey has been quite tumultuous. Yes, it has been a journey of achieving that vision where a lot of hard works of thousands of scientists has been put in. How did it begin? It began initially in 1960s and 70s, where we were only initiating. So we relied mostly on international cooperation, collaboration, technology transfer, some initial kind of experiments. But through this initiation phase, when we passed through it, we started to experiment on our own. Now we started experimental missions. We started to build our own prototypes. The ASLV was built, and some experiments were successful, some were unsuccessful, but it was a learning curve for us. That was mostly during 1980s. But the last 2 decades of learning, I would say 1970s and 1980s, it gave us a lot of confidence. And ultimately, in 1990s, we became operational. Many satellite launch vehicles were tested. ASLV was tested first. Later on, PSLV, it became very, very successful. And using the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, we launched many successful missions. And most of the work during these 1990s was focused, I would say, inward, or it was more and more national. Why? Because I was launching satellites. I was launching satellites or any other equipment for studies. So we learned sounding rockets. We launched sounding rockets to understand about upper atmosphere. I launched satellites for remote sensing, for studying the weather, for climatology. I launched many satellites through which I could now stream the TV directly to people's homes for knowledge. So for making maps, such things. Basically, my focus mostly in 1990s was looking inwards or giving benefits of space-based research and space-based product to the people, to the citizens. That means we focused on sustainable development, human resource development, developmental governance. We focused on socio-economic security itself. So 1990s was a phase where our focus was predominantly on providing national services. Then the 21st century that began, that was a phase of expansion. Now we started integrating at the global level. 21st century has been a century where ISRO is standing shoulder to shoulder with the best of the organizations. NASA, be it Roscosmos or JAXA, ESA, any space organization, ISRO stands shoulder to shoulder with them. In fact, in many aspects, ISRO is much better compared to them. So now we started to expand. Of course, the national services would be there. Apart from national services, we started to expand further. Now we started to serve other people, that means other countries. Those who do not have these capabilities, we took their satellites and we launched. So we started private commercial activities as well. So this has been our journey, which began very modestly through initiation phase. Today we are in an expansion phase and we have taken off, isn't it? Now, if you look at some of the numbers, these are some of the numbers, I would say, from last year, but still the launch vehicle missions that we have completed are 80 plus. We have completed many satellite missions. More than 110 satellite missions have been completed. For India, there are around 60 to 70 satellites which are active right now in the orbit. We have completed many technology demonstration projects. For instance, we have demonstrated technology for the scramjet. We have demonstrated technology for the reusable launch vehicle, right? ISRO has done that. All right. Apart from that, many space-based applications are coming up. More than 250, 260 space-based applications are already in action. And we have reached the moon as well. Chandrayaan 3, successful landing, not exactly South Pole, but near the South Pole for sure. We have recently launched the Aditya L1 as well. Very recently, the government has announced that they are going to create Indian space station probably by 2035. So look at this journey, look at the evolution, look at the evolution. If you see this particular image where you see a person carrying a rocket part on a cycle, from this today we have reached here, we have reached to the moon. That has been our journey. Now, if we dissect this journey a little, you will understand that there are phases. For instance, India's space evolution or space journey can be divided, say, from 1950 to formally or informally till 2015. Why? Because more or less till this period, ISRO was the center of all the activities. Indian Space Research Organization, it has been the center of all the activities. Of course, during this time, I can give so many examples where slowly and steadily some sort of privatization did start. For example, in 1992, the Antrix Corporation was set up as a commercial arm of ISRO, which took up some commercial orders. Yes. Apart from that, ISRO had already collaborated, or by this time, from 1990s to 2010 odd, we can say that ISRO collaborated with many SMEs, these small medium enterprises, mainly to fabricate some of the parts that they want. But I would say more or less during this particular period, the private sector was quite nascent. That means the space sector itself was under the control of the government largely. However, in recent times, I would say in the last decade or so, in the last 7-8 years, what we have observed is more and more promotion towards the private sector. In fact, if you look at India's numbers, you will understand that in the global space economy, till last year, the economy amounted for about $360 billion. And out of this, the Indian contribution was somewhere just 2%. That means around $7 to $8 billion is India's contribution in it. Again, mostly coming from ISRO and some private sector activities. But now in recent times, we are pushing more and more private sector participation. We know already many countries are a little ahead. That's fine. As I gave you example that there is SpaceX, there is Virgin Galactic, there is Blue Origin, there are many other companies now which are coming up slowly and steadily, and these companies have their own stations, own launch pads, etc. But let's not compare that. But slowly and steadily, Indian private sector is also increasing. Why? Because we have set ourselves targets. Now, if we look at India's number as of today, India's global market share in space is around 2%. And that is what we are seeking to change. That is what the government is seeking to change. From last few years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the administration, they are looking to enhance more and more private sector participation. Now, this is a statement which Prime Minister always says, that there should be no space between common man and space technology. That means private sector, common man should all get benefits of this. And for this, we have set ourselves target. Now, the target that we have set today we are about $7.6 billion in terms of global space economy. And we have set an ambitious target to reach about $50 billion by 2025 and capture a market share of 9%. So we have a target of capturing 10 to 15% of market share approximately by 2040. All right. So for this, what we are doing now, the question is what the government is doing. Now, in the last 4 to 5 years, many initiatives have come from the government side to promote private sector participation. One of the first ideas was creation of NSIL in 2019. The New Space India Limited was launched as a company, as a commercial arm of Indian Space Research Organization. Now, it is NSIL which was responsible for the development of SSLV in collaboration with ISRO, the Small Satellite Launch Vehicle. Many successful launches of SSLV have been done, and now recently it has been announced that SSLV technology would be transferred to private sector as well. In 2021, ISPA was created. Now, Indian Space Association, ISPA is Indian Space Association, which is a voluntary association of leading private sector industries connected with space, which are going to advise the government. They are going to advise and advocate with respect to the space related developments in India. Apart from these, the biggest development that has come in space department is this InSpace. Now, please remember, this InSpace was created in 2020. Today, if you say InSpace, this is, I would say in a single term, the regulator in the space sector. In space, the Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, it is a regulator. It is like a single window autonomous agency under Department of Space, which will facilitate the private sector participation. Now, before creation of INSPA, there was a lot of confusion in Indian setup. Why? Because there was some sort of a conflict of interest for ISRO. Now, of course, ISRO was the only organization, Indian Space Research Organization, which was more like the one involved in research and development and the one involved as a regulator as well. So there was a lot of conflict of interest there, isn't it? So what has happened now? We have created Indian Space Promotion Authorization Center, which will play a role of regulator. And ISRO, what would be the role of ISRO? It would be purely involved in research and development and helping the private sector, R&D and helping the private sector. Apart from NSIL, ISPA, InSpace, we have also brought the space policy in 2023, which has given a clear-cut direction to the private sector, what the government is looking for and how the government is going to behave going forward. This policy, it stands on 4 pillars. Pillar 1 says that we will give freedom to private sector for complete innovation. Pillar 2 says that the government is going to be only enabler with respect to space activities. It is not going to hamper the innovation. The pillar 4 talks about creating human resource development and attracting the youth towards space. And the 4th one is basically that space shall be used for progress of common man. Now, this space policy has given a clear-cut indication that the ISRO facilities will now be open here for private sector, private companies who want to use it, because you do understand, if there is a private company, they might not have a launch pad, they might not have some other facilities. ISRO will help them. They will enable and promote the non-governmental entities. Apart from that, the government will extend all the support to initial startups who are building these critical items, and the approach shall be demand driven for development of space related assets. Apart from that, there is skilling, upskilling and development of human resources. And for the last few years, I can say one of the programs which is run by ISRO in collaboration with other organizations is Unnati. Unnati 1.2, 2.2 and 3.2 have trained thousands of people with respect to space related activities and research. So all these things have been done, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 years. And what has it led to? It has led to many space related startups and companies coming up. I can give you some names who are very prominent. Now, Skyroot Aerospace, the CEO is, I told you, PK Chandana. Agnikul Cosmos, there is Anant Technologies. Anant Technologies, it works very closely with ISRO with respect to different kinds of research. Bellatrix Aerospace, it also has collaboration with ISRO on different research, testing of thrusters, etc. Apart from that, many other companies like Centum, Astra, Avantel, Satshore, Alpha Design, Dhruv Space. Now, Dhruv Space is also an upcoming startup which is getting great name. If you look at the numbers today, there are more than 190 space-based startups, and the growth has been quite tremendous between 2021 and 2022. 77% growth in space-based startups, which is a very positive news, isn't it? So one can say that our journey has been something like this, where initially, if you look at the space sector, it was predominantly controlled by ISRO. It was predominantly controlled by ISRO, and ISRO did a great job. And once we realized that we are reaching at the global level, and now we can expand, now we are helping the private sector to take off, isn't it? We are now helping the private sector to take off. There are so many companies that are in work now. As I told you, these are the companies which are already developed. ISRO is helping many of these companies. I can give you many examples, like ISRO working with Agnikul Cosmos. Agnikul is a Chennai-based company. ISRO last year in 2022 has helped Skyroot launch its Vikram launcher. Apart from that, ISRO is closely working with Bellatrix Aerospace as well to test some effect thrusters. So many activities are upcoming. Now, question is, sir, why did we discuss about all these things? Because a big news has come recently. One of the prominent companies from India, the startup Agnikul Cosmos, it has raised more than 2 billion rupees in funding. In the series of funding that they have raised, Now, very recently, 2 billion rupees means approximately, I would say, 25 to 26 million dollars of funding has come. Now, this is at a time when there is already a funding crunch. We all talk about the winter for the funding for startups, especially the established startups. Of course, there is funding going on for the new upcoming emerging ideas. It is going on, yes, but for established startups, or I can say mature startups, there is now a winter for funding. And amidst that, Indian startup has gained this more than 25, 26 million dollars worth funding, which is huge. Again, we can give some credit to ISRO for this because of the successful launch of Chandrayaan 3, not exactly technical, but again, to ISRO for successful launch of Chandrayaan 3 as well as the Aditya L1, which has brought focus on space-based activities and space-based companies. Again, we should not take any credit from Agnikul. Agnikul has been working tremendously. As I told you that they have gained huge amount of funding now. Apart from that, very soon, probably this month itself, they are going to launch their own rocket or their own launch vehicle, which is called as Agni Ban. So Agnikul Cosmos has developed its own Agni Ban, just like ISRO has GSLV, PSLV, etc. Agnikul has developed its own Agni Ban. That is the name of their launcher. It's a two-stage launch vehicle which has a capability to launch about 300 kgs to some 700 kilometers. Now this is the configuration. This is the Agnikul's Agniban rocket. Remember, it is two stage, 100 kg payload to 700 kg to 700 kilometer low earth orbit. It can be launched. And one of the specialities of this Agniban by Agnikul is its Dhanush. Now the Agniban has been built in such a way that it will have full mobility across all the configurations. Full mobility across all the configurations. So I can say that they have their own kind of launch pad. I wouldn't call it a launch pad per se, but it has full mobility. Now this kind of a setup has been built on which the Dhanush would be transported, or it can be transported on this Dhanush. The Agniban can be transported anywhere and it can be launched. So this is in progress. So aren't you feeling good? Aren't you feeling proud that Indian private sector companies are also coming up? Apart from that, there is one more news about the Skyroot. Yes, Skyroot is developing its own launch vehicles. The Vikram series, Vikram S was already launch tested, Vikram 1, Vikram 2, Vikram 3 with higher capability, and ISRO is collaborating with them as well. So probably going into future, we are looking at more and more private sector space companies, and that is what is highlighted by multiple reports. If you look at this, India's private sector, it skyrockets. Not just Agnikul, but there are many other startups who have gained funding this season. Apart from that, if you look at some of the estimations by different consultancies, different reports, they highlight that Indian space-based capability or Indian space sector, it has a potential to touch $100 billion by 2040. $100 billion by 2040. Right now, we are somewhere around $7 to $8 billion. Imagine the change from 2022, $7 billion to $100 billion in a span of 18 years. What is the kind of growth that you see here? Tremendous growth, isn't it? Yes. But will this journey be easy? Now you understood the entire evolution from ISRO to private entities, etc. But will this journey be easy? Of course not. Because yes, there are so many companies, the private agencies, private entities, companies are coming up, but there are things that we need to focus on. I would say these are some of the challenges that we need to take care of. Only then we might reach the target of $100 billion, what the consultancy companies are saying, okay, that India could reach there. What are the challenges for us? The first and the biggest challenge is the brain drain that is happening from our country. See, people study here, people learn here, and because of lack of opportunities, because of lack of job, or because of any other factor, they leave India and they go to some other country where they get better facilities, better pay. So what India does, or what Indian companies have to do, they have to look for people. First of all, they have to look for skilled people. If they do not find, then again, as a consultant, they have to pay higher for the others. That means it it increases the expenditure of these startups. So this brain drain, it is connected with the problem of lack of skilled workforce that we have in our country. So skilled workforce in our country shall go down, or it is going down because people are leaving India. Apart from this, there is a big technology gap. Now this has to be acknowledged. One needs to understand that yes, startups are coming up, but most of these startups, or most of the companies that were involved in private sector during the, I would say, privatization drive in 1990s 2000s, they mostly focused on fabrication. Now this is one of the issues, that this technology gap is mainly because we have focused on privatization, which is fabrication based. Now, ISRO gave contracts to other companies who built certain parts, say, of PSLV, GSLV, but they never expanded to innovation. Why? Because there is a technology gap, and the focus is on fabrication rather than innovation. It should be the other way around. It should be the other way around, isn't it? We need to focus on more and more research and development, innovation in space-based activities. Only then we will be able to achieve those targets. Apart from that, of course, we do need huge funding, huge funding. Why? Because see, starting a space related startup is no easy task. You need initial seed capital, and after that you need continuous rounds of funding, and a government support is also needed. Apart from that, there are other problems in Indian scenario, like problems of land acquisition. Land acquisition and the compensation itself is another issue. Add to it, in India, there is a lack of entrepreneurial zeal, especially connected to space. That is what we can talk about. See, Indian businessmen are no way behind in comparison to other Western businessmen, right? We talk about the Ambanis, Adanis, we talk about many other big names, right, who are right on the top with the counterparts from the West. But the same does not apply for space-based research, space-based activities. Why? Because there is a higher amount of risk that is involved here. Why? Because there is lack of clarity, or I would say there was lack of clarity till 2020. Yes, because till 2020 there was no regulator. There was no regulator. Everything was with ISRO. If something goes down the drain, then who is responsible for that? How would the dispute be settled? No clarity. Even today, I would say there is no clarity. Yes, from 2020 we have come up with InSpace, but is there any law? Is there any law which regulates space-based activities? There is no legal framework. There is no legal framework. Now, there is absence of space law, of course. So, because of which there is absence of insurance norms, indemnity clauses, dispute settlement resolution. All these things are missing right now in India's space legal framework, I would say. Yes, there is a lot of talk. Okay, I think from almost 5-6 years, this is going on. This is going on. And draft space activities bill 2017, it is pending, and it is still a draft. And this is quite a sad thing. Again, this is not the latest news. The government, it mentioned that space activities bill is under active consideration. I think, if I'm not wrong, this news is from 2020 or 21, and still no progress on it. So this is one aspect that we need to improve if we want to promote private sector. See, for example, if I want to start a company, space related company, I need to have that clarity, because I will be investing crores of money. I'll be taking crores of loan. And if I have legal clarity, if I have rules and regulations which are proper, then it will help me to build. I will also have a long-term vision, isn't it? And that is the reason why there is a lack of entrepreneurial zeal also in India. So we need better rules, better regulations, better legal clarity. Slowly and steadily, that is coming with InSpace. Some amount of clarity is coming. Some amount of clarity is coming. But a space bill has to come. A space act has to come, which will delineate all these things, because you do understand that India is also bound by international agreements. We are bound by the Outer Space Treaty. We are bound by the Moon Agreement, the Rescue Agreement, the Liability Conventions at the United Nations. And the companies in India, they shall also be obligated to that, isn't it? And for that, I need better clarity. Apart from that, there are challenges with respect to intellectual property. These are there in any sector which is connected with innovation, research, and the space is no exception. Apart from that, one more challenge is this upstream and downstream integration, especially for the new startups that come up. Now, what is the meaning of this? Now, you do understand, even if it is a startup, as I told you, Agni, be it Agni or Skyroot, first of all, they rely on ISRO. Now, you do understand ISRO itself relies on something else. ISRO itself relies on other facilities in India and abroad as well. So what we need, if there is a private entity, there is a private startup here, then it needs to integrate with the upstream side as well as the downstream side, by keeping ISRO at the center, of course. So that is something which is missing as of now. But a long-term vision, a long-term mission has come up through the Space Policy 2023. And if we are to achieve this dream of $100 billion of space industry, and if we are to skyrocket in a real sense, then we need to resolve these issues for sure from Indian space sector. As and when they happen, we will have a discussion. But I hope that through this lecture, you have gained enough insight to attempt that question, that you have understood the evolution of India's space program or the India's space journey, and how private entities, private sector is being promoted from last few years. If there is any update on this, we are going to have a discussion again on Study IQ. Thank you for watching this video. Jai Hind.